Israel and the United States destroyed. Iran's largest underground bomb production facilities. On the night of March 22nd, B-1 Lancer bombers and F-35 stealth aircraft moved east of Tehran. The target was Damavand, located 50 kilometers east of Tehran, a massive underground bomb laboratory hidden in the strategic corridor between the Kojir Aviation Complex and the Parchin nuclear facility, the twin hearts of Iran's nuclear and missile programs. Iran had specifically chosen this location, close enough to the capital for logistical ease, yet mountainous enough to provide protection against attacks. Satellite imagery showed that the density of air defense systems around the facility was higher than in any other region of Iran. The regime protected this installation above all else. Normally, reaching this location was nearly impossible, but the waves of attacks that had been ongoing since February 28 had systematically dismantled the shield. The S-300 systems, Bavar 373, radars, and command centers, the shield of Damavand had fallen. The first phase of the operation began with electronic warfare. The F-35s neutralized the remaining radars. Early warning systems were blinded. Then F-35 and F-16 aircraft approached the target, and the first strikes were directed at the tunnel entrances. These were not ordinary doors. According to a report leaked years ago by the Iranian opposition, the main tunnel in Kojir is approximately 1 kilometer long, 12 meters wide, and branches into 6 lateral tunnels, each about half a kilometer long, forming an underground city reinforced with concrete, buried between 20 and 100 meters deep inside the mountain. Squadrons of F-15 aircraft began dropping bombs, equipped with BLU-109, warheads weighing 2,000 pounds onto the tunnel entrances. All of this was preparation for the heavy bombardment by B-1B Lancer bombers. The Shahid Hemmet Industrial Group, Iran's largest ballistic missile manufacturer, was conducting fuselage production and final assembly in the largest tunnel. The Bakhari Group was carrying out mass production of the Fateh 110 missile family across 5 separate facilities. The production line of the Haj Qasem ballistic missile, with a range of 1,000 kilometers and the capability to strike Israel, was also located in these tunnels. Warehouses contained hundreds of missiles ready to launch, thousands of tons of solid rocket fuel and fuel components, waiting to be mixed in planetary mixers. The secondary explosions, lasting minutes in the videos, serve as proof of the scale of these reserves. Multiple entry points were destroyed simultaneously, and the hundreds of people inside, Hemmet assemblers, bakery technicians, guidance engineers, warhead specialists, suddenly lost contact with the outside world. Exit routes were sealed, ventilation stopped. When the entrances collapsed, the most brutal phase of the operation began. Hundreds of personnel inside, engineers, technicians, soldiers, suddenly lost communication with the outside world. Exit routes were blocked, making emergency evacuation impossible. But collapsing the entrances was not enough. The real targets were deep inside the mountain. U.S. B-1B. Lancer bombers dropped GBU-72, bunker-penetrating bombs weighing 5,000 pounds. These bombs penetrated concrete and rock to reach the interior of the tunnels, detonating inside, targeting solid fuel mixing units, planetary mixers, missile engine test benches, and final assembly lines. These machines are subject to international export controls, and Iran acquires them through illicit channels. Their destruction creates a gap that will take years to fill. During the Israeli operation in October 2024, 12, planetary mixers in Kojir were destroyed. But during that attack, air defenses were still active. Flight times were short, and there was no opportunity for repeated strikes. In 2026, conditions are completely different. Air defenses have collapsed, and coalition aircraft can operate for hours. The GBU-72 provided sufficient penetration, power for the tunnels in Damavand, which were between 20 and 100 meters deep. Laser-guided bunker buster. Bombs like the GBU-28 targeted deeper entrances, administrative buildings, logistics centers, and personnel shelters. due to the high speed of these munitions, became impossible to intercept. According to a Reuters report, these structures were surrounded by earthen trenches to prevent explosions from spreading between buildings, which itself indicates how explosive the materials inside were. The pace of the attacks that night was intense. Part of the tunnel system extended into Mount Kasfet to the north, 300 meters above the surrounding terrain, housing a second underground complex. Given this multi-layered structure, it is inevitable that dozens of aircraft were assigned to a single complex. Then chain reactions began. The impact of the bombs ignited thousands of tons of solid rocket fuel and ready-to-use munitions stored inside. In videos captured by local residents, the sky turned orange, and secondary explosions were heard for minutes. Furthermore, Damavand was not being attacked for the first time. On March 5th, the United States had already struck the same area, triggering a massive explosion at the IRGC's Haidar Karar headquarters. March 22nd marked the beginning of the second wave. Structures that were not completely destroyed in the first attack were targeted again. The coalition's strategy was clear: strike, assess via satellite, return, and finish the job. Iran attempts to reopen access points within 48 hours. The coalition observes and strikes again. The IDF listed 4 additional categories of targets that same night: an anti-air missile depot, a Ministry of Defense weapons factory, an IRGC production facility, and an intelligence ministry headquarters. Damavand was targeted between March 23rd and 23. Iran's entire underground weapons infrastructure was systematically attacked. In southern Iran, an ammunition depot under reinforced structures at the Sirjan naval training base was heavily struck on March 21. OSINT. Accounts described it as the largest explosion seen so far. Images showed a massive fire column and secondary explosions lasting minutes, proving that the depot was full and detonated in a chain reaction. The Ayabad ballistic missile base near Sirjan, another missile city in Hormuz province, was attacked by B-2 Spirit bombers in the early days of the war. The concentration of targets in the south indicates that Iran's naval and missile infrastructure along the Hormuz coast is being systematically dismantled. The ammunition depot at the Dezful Air Base and Vardadi also exploded in a massive blast during the same period. Dezful is located in western Iran near the Iraqi border, and a significant portion of ballistic missile launches toward Israel originated from this region. Images of the explosion clearly show multiple secondary detonations. The coalition is systematically targeting not only factories but also reserves. The operations between March 21 and 23 were not random. Since late February, every link in Iran's missile and drone production chain had been targeted, and by the end of March, nearly the entire chain had been severed. The defense unit south of the nuclear complex in Isfahan was struck twice between March 6 and 18. The first strike destroyed above-ground structures, while the second collapsed underground connections. This facility served as a command and control center for the protection of the Isfahan nuclear complex and included a tunnel system built around 2007. Both tunnel entrances were hit. The cooling unit protected by a concrete barrier was destroyed, and the underground section collapsed during the second strike. This attack has critical implications for the nuclear program. Even if the nuclear facilities in Isfahan themselves were not directly hit, their defense and control layers were removed. With the command center destroyed, coordination of security, early warning systems, and emergency response capabilities collapsed. Even if the facility remains physically intact, it is now defenseless. The drone factory in the Umanisha district of Isfahan was completely destroyed between March 8 and 11. This was the facility where Iran produced its Shahed suicide drones. Satellite images before and after, published by CENTCOM, are striking. An active factory on March 3 became unrecognizable rubble by March 12. The Advanced Fiber Development Company south of Qazvin was destroyed between March 5 and 17. This company produced carbon fiber, a critical material for the lightweight, yet durable structure of ballistic missile bodies. The U.S. Treasury Department had sanctioned the company in May 2025 due to its links with the IRGC Air Force. Spokesperson from the IDF warned the public in Persian before the strike, and post-strike satellite images showed that the main structures were completely destroyed. The ballistic missile assembly facilities at Kojir and Parchan, the heart of Iran's final assembly capability, suffered heavy damage on March 7th. This facility, affiliated with the Shahid Hemmat Industrial Group, was the final stage where components were assembled into missiles. Before and after images from CENTCOM confirmed that assembly lines were rendered inoperable. A turbine factory in the Shokuhye industrial zone in Qom was also targeted. Critical components for missile and drone engines were produced there. The nearby airport was also targeted. The missile production facility east of Tehran, attacked in the early days of the campaign, showed further damage in mid-March satellite imagery. The coalition repeatedly returned to the same targets to complete the destruction. One of the most critical targets in all these operations is a machine most people have never heard of: the planetary mixer. These massive industrial mixers are used to homogeneously mix solid rocket fuel components. The production of solid fuel motors, the core of ballistic missiles, is impossible without them. These machines are subject to strict export controls, and Iran cannot purchase them on the open market. They are acquired through sanctions evasion. Losing a planetary mixer means it could take months or even years to replace. An analysis by the James Martin Center identified extensive damage to mixer and casting facilities in Kojir. When placed within the missile production chain, the picture becomes clear. The carbon fiber body factory in Qazvin was destroyed. Solid fuel mixing facilities in Kojir were hit. Final assembly lines in Parchan were destroyed. Turbine and engine factories in Qum were demolished. Drone production facilities were wiped out. Ammunition depots in Sirjan and Dezful were destroyed. The command and control center in Isfahan collapsed. Every link in the chain, from raw materials to finished products to storage, was targeted. The main analysis that emerges is this: when a coalition of 22 nations, representing a significant portion of global air and naval power, is at your doorstep, what military options remain? In a conventional war scenario, military analysts estimate that the survival chances of Iran's military are near zero. The older frigates and small, fast attack boats of the Revolutionary Guard can be destroyed within seconds inside the massive kill zone, formed by carrier-based aircraft and Aegis combat systems. In this desperate equation, Tehran's strategy is not victory but denial, closing the region to the enemy. They have three asymmetric options. The first is covert mining operations using Ghadir-class mini-submarines and disguised civilian vessels. The second is using rugged coastal terrain to launch surprise attacks with NOR and C-802 anti-ship missiles from hidden tunnel networks in the Zagros Mountains. The third is involving regional proxies, ordering Houthi forces in Yemen to attack trade routes in the Red Sea to divide coalition forces between Bab el-Mandeb and the Strait of Hormuz. However, none of these options are sufficient to defeat the coalition. The goal is to raise insurance costs by attacking a tanker or a minesweeper, and to break political will by creating global panic. This approach is less a military strategy and more a high-risk asymmetric suicide doctrine destined to fail. This grim strategic landscape reveals a massive boomerang effect rarely seen in geopolitical history. Tehran assumed that closing the Strait of Hormuz would cripple the global economy, but instead fell into its own trap. All diplomatic and economic bridges to Europe have been irreversibly destroyed. Military elements have been integrated into global terrorist networks, and the modern navies of 22 nations have been invited to Iran's own shores. While Beijing and Moscow watch silently from afar, global superpowers have entered the conflict, without hesitation to protect their economic interests. Iran's famous leverage card has burned on the table, trapped within the asymmetric bottleneck it created. Surrounded by overwhelming military force, Iran is left struggling helplessly in the storm it unleashed. The regime's grand strategy has been crushed by a devastating defeat in its own waters. Thank you for watching the military conflict.